In the summer of 1977, an unassuming council house in Enfield, North London, became the site of one of the most chilling paranormal cases in history, the Enfield Poltergeist. What should have been a place of comfort for the Hodgson family turned into a nightmare beyond imagination. Peggy Hodgson, a single mother struggling to raise her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy, had no idea that their modest home on Green Street would soon be filled with fear. The house, a typical post-war council property, was meant to be a safe haven, but instead it became a battleground between the living and something far more sinister. Now, let's hear from Janet as she recounts the terrifying events that haunted her childhood.
So what was the first time something strange happened in this house?
Well, me and my brother, we were settling down to bed one evening and we could hear this shuffling noise, and Mum coming because she could hear us shouting and screaming, and we said that the chest of drawers was moving towards the bedroom door. So she said, oh, don't be silly, but she see it move for herself, and then at one point she couldn't push it back, and then she got quite upset and said, right, if we run downstairs.
Well, you went to get a neighbour, didn't you?
That's right, yes.
Vic Nottingham was the neighbour, who was a builder.
That's right.
At just 11 years old, Janet Hodgson found herself at the center of a nightmare. What began as small, unexplainable disturbances soon escalated into something far more sinister. She and her siblings would hear sudden bangs in the night, watch as furniture moved on its own, and feel an eerie presence lingering in the shadows. For months, the Hodgson family endured these terrifying events, struggling to find support or answers. Their once safe home had become a place of fear, where no one felt at ease. The children, too afraid to sleep alone, often huddled together for comfort, while their mother, Peggy, tried desperately to reassure them despite her own growing dread. As the haunting worsened, neighbors and friends became hesitant to visit. Though many sympathized, skepticism from outsiders left the Hodgsons feeling increasingly isolated. Yet to them, the horror was all too real, an inescapable nightmare that consumed their daily lives. Determined to prove they weren't imagining things, the family documented as much of the activity as possible. Chairs slid across the floor without warning, doors slammed shut, and toys were flung through the air. Though the footage was raw and often unclear, it offered chilling evidence of an unseen force that would soon captivate the nation.
And we was all just standing in the kitchen, all of us together. And then all of a sudden a pool of water come from nowhere in the middle of the floor in the kitchen. And then we heard the toilet chain pull. And there was no one at all out in the toilet, we was all in the kitchen. And the door opened in the toilet, then the chain went, and as we walked out there, the toilet brush came from the thing what it was in, the container, and the brush just come up and settled on top of the toilet.
As the disturbances worsened, a desperate Peggy Hodgson called the police to 284 Green Street. Expecting a routine call, officers arrived skeptically until they witnessed furniture moving on its own. Stunned and powerless to explain what they saw, they left deeply unsettled. That night, the Enfield poltergeist case became more than just a haunting. It became a chilling mystery that defied logic.
It came off the floor, or maybe a ½ inch, I should say, and I saw it slide off to the right, about 3.5 to 4 feet before it came to rest. I checked to see whether or not it could possibly have slid along the floor. I placed a marble on the floor to see whether or not the marble would go in the same direction as the chair did, and it didn't roll at all. I checked for wires under the cushion of the chair, and I could find no explanation at all.
When she had no other choice left, she finally called the paranormal investigators. When paranormal investigators Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair first arrived at the Hodgson home, they were prepared for skepticism, expecting to find rational explanations for the strange disturbances reported by the family. Both men were respected members of the Society for Psychical Research, and each had witnessed paranormal activity on previous cases. But what they encountered at 284 Green Street would test their beliefs and push their investigative skills to the limit. Maurice Gross, an inventor turned investigator, was one of the first to respond to the Hodgson family's plea for help.
The slipper was thrown across the room and hit the door as I was holding the door.
As he spent more time in the house, Gross found himself trapped in a nightmare of unexplainable and deeply unsettling phenomena. He watched in horror as chairs scraped and slid across the floor, seemingly moved by unseen hands. Heavy curtains billowed and twisted violently, as if caught in a raging storm. Despite the windows being sealed shut, the air crackled with an eerie energy, and objects, books, picture frames, even furniture, were hurled across rooms with terrifying force, as if some unseen presence was growing restless, lashing out in fury at the living. Over time, Playfair became deeply involved in the case, developing a protective attitude toward the family. He saw firsthand the strain it placed on Peggy and her children, and understood how frustrating and isolating it was for them to face public doubt. Even though the activity was terrifying, he believed the family was genuine.
You'll hear here the whistling first of all, and then the barking.
And here is this noise.
If you can whistle and bark and groan, then you can talk. And I asked it to actually say my name.
Result. Well, just a minute. Right, we'll try again. I want you to call out my name. My complete name. Maurice Gross. See if you can do that. Maurice.
Now that was the first time we heard the voice, and since then we've been hearing it again and again, and it's been getting louder and louder.
Well, I think this is probably the best case this century. In fact, as far as documentation is concerned, it may be the best case of all time.
When the deep, guttural voice first spoke through Janet, claiming to be Bill, Grouse and Playfair were cautious, yet curious. They questioned the voice repeatedly, trying to catch Janet off guard to see if it could reveal knowledge beyond her experience.
What about the voices? When did the voices start?
December the 12th.
December the 12th?
Yes.
And how did they start?
Well, one night Mr. Grove was talking about it about 8:30. He said, all we need now is the voices to talk. And that night...
Whether it would answer. Is anybody there? Think there's anyone there just now?
Yeah, I do.
Who's that?
What?
Who's that, Janet?
Pardon? Stuart. Sir.
When investigators Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair pressed for answers, a deep, raspy voice responded from within Janet Hodgson, sending chills through the room. "I'm Bill," it said. "I used to live here and I died in that chair." The eerie declaration unsettled the investigators, but what made it even more disturbing was that details provided by the voice aligned with real events. Neighbors later confirmed that an elderly man named Bill had indeed lived in the house and passed away there. It was information that Janet, an 11-year-old girl, was unlikely to have known. Despite the extensive documentation of unexplained phenomena, furniture moving on its own, chilling voices, and objects flying through the air, concrete answers remained elusive. As their investigation neared its end, Gross and Playfair were left with one lingering question. Their final report concluded that the events defied conventional explanation. Both investigators believed that the family had endured something beyond mere hoaxes or childhood imagination. For Gross, the voice of Bill detailing his supposed past life in the house was enough to convince him they had witnessed something science could not yet explain. Playfair, though initially skeptical, left with a profound respect for the Hodgson's suffering and the bizarre occurrences he had personally observed. As time passed, the Hodgson family gradually returned to a quieter life. But for Janet, the memories of those harrowing months never fully faded. She later reflected on the toll it had taken, admitting that while parts of the experience felt like a blur, the fear, the questions, and the lingering unease remained with her forever. The Enfield Poltergeist case remains one of the most mysterious and well-documented hauntings in history. Whether it was the restless spirit of a former tenant, the manifestation of a family's trauma, or something entirely beyond human understanding, one thing is certain: the events at 284 Green Street continue to challenge our perception of reality, leaving behind more questions than answers. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support means a lot. Thanks for watching.